Welcome to a video reviewing the process for multiplying and dividing fractions. Across the top here I have listed the three major steps to multiply fractions. First, you need to convert mixed numbers to improper fractions if you have any mixed numbers to begin with. Cancel common factors in the numerator and denominator, and I'll show you what that means in a moment, and then multiply across the numerator and across the denominator. So in this first example I have 2/3 multiplied by 3/5. In this case, we don't have any mixed numbers, so the first step of converting mixed numbers to improper fractions I don't need to do. The second step of canceling common factors in the numerator and denominator, you can think of this just like reducing or simplifying a fraction. Anytime you have a factor in the numerator and a factor in the denominator that match, you can cancel them. So for example, right here I've got a 3 in the numerator and a 3 in the denominator. So I'm going to divide both of those by 3. When I divide this one by 3, I get 1. And when I divide this one by 3, I get 1. The 2 and the 5 don't have any factors in common. So multiplying across, 2 times 1 is 2. And 1 times 5 is 5. So 2/3 times 3/5 is 2/5. For this second example, I do have a mixed number, so I'm going to leave the 1/5 alone. That's just a fraction. First thing I'm going to do is convert this to an improper fraction. So recall that you multiply the 7 times the 2 and get 14, and then you add 1. That's 15. So that's going to be a 15 in the numerator. And then the denominator stays the same. That was 7 to begin with, so it's going to stay 7. Now when I look at the numerators and denominators here, I see that this 15 right here and this 5 here have a common factor of 5. In other words, 5 divides into both of those. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to divide each of those by 5. If I divide 15 by 5, I get 3. If I divide 5 by 5, I get 1. After I divide out my common factors, I just multiply across. The numerator, I have 1 times 3, that's 3. Denominator, I have 1 times 7, that's 7. So 1/5 times 2 1/7 is 3/7. If you have 3 factors, or 3 fractions that you're multiplying together, you can simplify across the numerators and denominators multiple times. You just need to choose one numerator and one denominator at a time. So, for example, in this third example here, I see that I've got a 2 and a 16 that have a common factor of 2. So let me divide those out. If I divide that by 2, I get 1. If I divide 16 by 2, I get 8. Now I'm going to go back and look for other common factors. If I look at the 35 and the 14, those have a common factor of 7. So I'm going to divide those by 7. That's going to give me a 5 in the numerator. If I divide this by 7, I get a 2 in the numerator. And then I can keep going here. I guess the 5 and the 15, this 5 and this 15 have a common factor of 5. So if I divide that by 5, I get 1. If I divide 15 by 5, I get 3. So now I'm starting to get a little bit of a mess here. So let me write down what I have. I have 1/3 times 1/8 times 3/2. Looks like I have one more set of common factors that I can cancel here. The 3's, 3 divides into 3 one time. 3 divides into that 3 one time. So now if I multiply across, 1 times 1 times 1 is 1. 1 times 8 times 2 is 16. So the product of those 3 fractions that I started with, 2/15, 35/16, and 3/14, turns out to be 1/16. So that's a quick review of multiplying. Let's go ahead and move on to dividing. The steps for dividing are basically the same as the steps for multiplying, with one step extra. After you convert your mixed numbers to improper fractions, you need to change the division operation into multiplication. And you need to remember that dividing fractions is the same as multiplying by the reciprocal of that fraction. And reciprocal means you flip the numerator and denominator. So let me just show you a couple of examples here. Number 4 here says 1/8 divided by 3/16. We don't have any mixed numbers to convert, so I'm done with that step. I need to do this step here, which is to change division into multiplication. So anytime you're changing division into multiplication, there's two things you need to do. You need to change the operation and you change the fraction that follows. So this becomes 1/8. The division turns into multiplication, and the fraction that follows the division turns into the reciprocal. Then you're back to a multiplication problem. I see a common factor here of 8. If I divide these by 8, I get 1 in the denominator and 2 in the numerator. And then if I multiply across, 1 times 2 is 2, 1 times 3 is 3. So 1/8 divided by 3/16 is 2/3. And the last example here, I've got some mixed numbers, so let's convert those to improper fractions first. So 5 times 1 is 5, plus 2 is 7. So that's going to be a 7 in the numerator. The denominator stays the same. I'm going to leave the division sign and convert this one. So 10 times 2 is 20, plus 1 is 21 tenths. So I'm done with the first step. Now the step for the division, I need to change the division sign to a multiplication and change the fraction that follows into its reciprocal. So the 7/5 stays the same. Change the division into multiplication and then use the reciprocal. So I have 7/5 times 10/21. Then I'm going to cancel some common factors here. So 7 divides into 7 one time, and 7 divides into 21 3 times. I also have some common factors here. 5 divides into 10 2 times, and 5 divides into 5 one time. So now if I multiply across, 1 times 2 is 2, 1 times 3 is 3. Oh, I got 2/3 again. That's a coincidence. There's a quick review of how to multiply and divide fractions.